Objection.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't know where we're headed in terms of votes tonight, but let me tell you where we're headed in terms of the bill before the Senate. I understand Saddam is gone and the authorization to use military force directed at him in 2002. It makes sense to me, quite frankly, believe it or not, to revisit that. But what we need to make sure we do is not leave our troops exposed that are in the fight today. This is 2023. So Senator Schumer keeps talking about Bush lied, people died. Here's what I would say to my Democratic colleagues and Republican colleagues. In the last 2 years, we have, I think, a little over 2,000 American forces in Iraq there to make sure ISIS doesn't come back, to keep the place stable. After Obama pulled out of Iraq, the JV team became the varsity. ISIS basically took over most of Syria, destroyed Mosul, wiped out the Yazidi community, raped, murdered, and pillaged, and we finally got regained control of Iraq. We put troops back in. They should never have been taken out, and we need those troops to stay in Iraq and make sure ISIS doesn't come back. When they had a foothold in Raqqa, Syria, as well as Iraq, ISIS directed attacks at the United States and our allies in Europe, and all hell broke loose. So what I would want the body to understand, in 2023, Americans are serving in Iraq, and we owe it to them to make sure that we can use whatever military force necessary to protect them against Shiite militias operating in Iraq at the direction of Iran. 56 attacks against American forces in the last 2 years under President Biden. They're trying to drive us out of Iraq. These Shiite militias are operating all over the country. I appreciate the partnership we have with the government of Iraq, but we don't have a status of forces agreement. So I have an amendment. It's very simple. It would replace the 2002 AUMF with the following: an authorization to use military force to protect Americans stationed in Iraq against attacks by Shiite militias in Iraq. That is an ongoing problem. Let's do not expose our troops to being attacked. Let's don't continue the narrative that we're pulling out of the Mideast, because you do so at your own peril. After the debacle in Afghanistan, everybody's wondering about America's resolve. So to all the people who talk about repealing the 2002 AUMF because Saddam is gone, I actually understand that to a point. But what I hope you'll understand is that the way you've written this, the people in Iraq today, the Americans serving, we don't have their backs, and we owe it to them to have their backs. We need to let the Iranian militias know, and others, if you attack Americans in Iraq, we're coming after you. And to those who say the AUMF needs to be repealed because it confers too much power on a president, we need to take that authority back as Congress, well, then here's what I would say to you. Do we owe it to those serving in Iraq to provide authority from Congress that we will have your back if you're attacked by Shiite militias that are operating in Iraq? This is about Iraq. It's not about Iran. And I can't believe this body would not support an authorization to use military force to protect Americans stationed in Iraq who've been attacked over 56 times in the last 2 years by Shiite militias operating in Iraq. If we do that, shame on us. And to those who say, well, the president has Article 2 authority, he can do this on his own. You can't have it both ways. Is the goal to pull back power from the president? Or is the goal to say the president has whatever power he needs in Iraq? What I want to do is be crystal clear. If the 2002 AUMF is repealed, we have a hole in our defense. We do not have congressional response or statement about what to do to protect over 2,000 Americans serving in Iraq that have been attacked 56 times. I've got a solution to that problem. If you repeal the 2002 AUMF, let's replace it to one tailored to the situation involving American forces being attacked by Shiite militias in Iraq, to be unequivocal to the Shiite militias and others, you attack Americans at your own peril. If we do not do that, you have tremendously exposed our troops. In your effort to wind down one war, you've created a threat to those who are fighting the war we're in now. And if you think Al-Qaeda has been defeated, you think they're not a threat to us and our partners in the Mideast and Europe, you're really not following the news. General Corelli, the CENTCOM commander, said last week that ISIS-K, the ISIS organization in Afghanistan, has regenerated to the point within the next 6 months they would have the ability to attack the United States without warning. And there's some amendments here to basically do away with the 2001 AUMF that dealt with the attack on our nation. So whatever political point you're trying to make about repealing the 2002 AUMF, here's what I want you to understand. The way you're doing it is putting American lives at risk in Iraq. If you can't muster the courage, the Congress can't, to say to Shiite militias, you attack our troops at your own peril, we have let those serving down. And I am very, very intent, using my voice in the Senate, to say that those who are in Iraq that have been attacked continuously by Shiite militias, I recognize the threat you face, and I'm willing to do something about it. Not to pass this amendment exposes those in theater in Iraq to continual attack. It will embolden the Shiite militia because they think we've pulled the plug on the place. It will continue a narrative that America's in retreat in the war on terrorism. It will make every problem in Afghanistan worse, and we have a chance to do something about it. Please take that opportunity. If we pass this amendment, we can at least say the following. To those in Iraq, we did not abandon you. We did not forget about you. We said clearly as a Congress that we have your back, and we made an unequivocal statement to the Shiite militias that are roaming around in Iraq. You attack our people, we're coming after you. And if we don't do that, we're sending a terrible message to our enemies, and we're letting those who are serving in Iraq down. Iraq is moving toward democracy, slowly but surely, inefficient, ugly at times, but 20 years later, there have been elections in Iraq. We have a government working with us that is surrounded in a very dangerous neighborhood. So to those who are wanting to repeal this AUMF, you have ignored a major threat. You're creating a problem to troops in the field. I am here to point it out to you, and I'd love to work in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that those who are left in Iraq, that are serving there to make sure ISIS doesn't come back and to protect our interests in Iraq, that they will have the voice of Congress behind them. There will be an authorization to use military force to protect them against Shiite militias, and it's very specific, in Iraq, who have had a pattern of attacking our troops. And if we don't do this, we're sending the worst possible signal to our enemies. We're letting our troops down. And if there are further attacks, I told you so, because I know it's coming. Let's live in the real world. Al-Qaeda is not defeated. ISIS is not defeated. They've been dealt a punishing blow in certain places. But if we take our eye off the ball, they're coming back here. And the easiest targets of all are those Americans in Syria and Iraq who are on the front lines, a virtual wall between us and radical Islam that would kill us all if they could. I think we owe it to those that we send to Iraq, and the administration is right to keep them there. You're right to keep that residual force in Iraq as an insurance policy against the rise of ISIS, but you're wrong not having your voice lent to the cause that an authorization to use military force against Shiite militias That needs to be the law of the land. We owe it to those in Iraq. It's not a hypothetical problem. 56 attacks in the last 2 years. And if we pull the plug on the AUMF in Iraq without dealing with the Shiite militia threat, we'll send a horrible signal at the worst possible time. So I urge a yes vote for this amendment to replace the 2002 AUMF with a specific authorization to use military force against Shiite militias that are attacking Americans continuously in the last 2 years to protect those that are on the front lines of this fight. I urge a yes vote.